been suggested many times that every character, every symbol, every archetype and every sacred number in every story represents an aspect of our self. There's that story about the man called Mustafa. Now, Mustafa was poor. He was woebegone, and you could say he was spiritless. Every day he wandered aimlessly in the town, and at night he had to sleep under the outdoor oven of some rich family. Now one night, as the dawn was coming up, Mustafa was awoken by the sound of a little bell. And then soon it came into his vision that there was a vendor dragging a little cart with a cage on the back. And in that cage was a tiny gazelle. Now the vendor, ringing his bell, said, "Who will buy this tiny gazelle?" Mustafa, rubbing his eyes, said, "It's no good coming here because rich people sleep late, so you won't have anyone to buy the creature here." But then the little gazelle put its head outside the cage and imparted to Mustafa, "Buy me, you will not regret it." Now, without even thinking, out of Mustafa's mouth came, "But I've only got 2 copper coins." The vendor said, "I'll take it. It's better than having to feed the creature." So the gazelle was let out of the cage, and the vendor went off to the nearest coffee shop, leaving Mustafa with the tiny creature. Now the little creature said to Mustafa, "You have saved me, so I can make you rich. Wait here for me." And the little gazelle trotted off, with Mustafa thinking to himself, "Well, that's the last I'm going to see of that little creature." But it was not so, and the little gazelle set off in the direction of a road which took him to a palatial residence in which there lived a noble. Now, when the gazelle was in front of the noble, it said, "My master is a rich merchant who has been beset by robbers and is now dressed in rags and afraid to present his face. Can you help?" Well, the noble, being a generous man, immediately went off and brought back garments of the finest linen, which he gave to the gazelle. The gazelle said, "Well, here is a token of my master's gratefulness," that was hidden on his being. And he dropped at the feet of the noble a beautiful emerald. Now, as the gazelle was leaving, the noble said to it, "Oh, please, bring your master here so that I can give him hospitality." And then the gazelle trotted off and went back to Mustafa, who, with great surprise, saw him carrying his parcel of garments. And the gazelle said to Mustafa, go wash in the river and put on these fine garments and come with me. But remember, you will tell that you are a rich merchant who was beset by robbers and lost your wealth. So dutifully, Mustafa followed the gazelle, and they made their way back to the palatial residence of the noble, who welcomed Mustafa and invited him in to feast and stay as long as he wished. And they did spend evenings in conversation amicably. But after this time, the noble said to Mustafa, "You are obviously a fine man, and I believe worthy of being the husband of my daughter." And so it transpired that Mustafa was offered the hand of the noble's daughter in marriage and welcomed into this lifestyle of this wealthy noble. So it did not take long for Mustafa to become accustomed to having everything provided for him. He did not have to lift a finger, and all was given to him, so that he became somewhat indolent and a little arrogant. Life was good. But then one day, his wife came to him and said, "Husband, the gazelle is ailing and has asked that you bring to it a bowl of curd." Now Mustafa was in the midst of a game of black backgammon, so he said to his wife, "You go and feed the gazelle. Can't you see that I'm busy in the middle of my game?" So the wife went off, but came back some time later and said, "The gazelle is very weak and would not accept the curd from myself, asking that it should come from your hand." And Mustafa again fobbed her off, being busy with some other diversion in his life. But that night, when they went to bed, as an afterthought, Mustafa said to his wife, "Did you feed the gazelle?" And his wife said, "The gazelle has died. It wished to have the curd from your hand." "And," said his wife, "from the way that you have treated this creature, I find that I no longer love you, so I've decided to take back my dowry and return to my family." "Oh," said Mustafa, "go to sleep, and in the morning you'll have forgotten about the whole thing." But in that night, Mustafa had a dream that the tiny gazelle came to him and spoke words to him. "Mustafa made excuses, but I asked my wife to feed you." But still, he felt chastened and ashamed. And in the morning, when he awoke, he found himself dressed in rags under the outdoor oven of a rich man, and he remained poor for the rest of his days. So the question that arises from this story, and there are other similar stories to this one, different symbols, different characters, but each giving the same essence, message, so to speak. What for us does the gazelle represent? In our being.
The divine. The divine. The divine.
Okay.
Our inner world.
Yes.
Our inner world. Paying attention to our inner world.
Yes.